Welcome to another Public Speaking Expert podcast. My name is Elliot, your host, and today I have an incredible guest. But before we get going, before we interview and deep dive into the mind of my guest, who will talk about speaking for influence, why we need to step up and speak, and everything like that. Because this season is all about influence. Let me just remind you that we record these episodes live every Monday on LinkedIn and YouTube. And of course, they're released further down the line on a Saturday. So you must make sure you're liking, subscribing, and of course, leaving me beautiful comments and reviews. And for everybody that does leave me a beautiful comment and review and sends me a picture of it, I will send them a copy of my book. So just remember to tune in every single Monday live on LinkedIn or YouTube, on every Saturday for advice, tips, steps, information, understanding latest trends, understanding what is going on in the world of speaking and influence, in the world, your world, where you can have an impact on your industry, on your community, which is why you should be following the Public Speaking Expert podcast on all the major platforms, not just one. You need to follow them everywhere. It's interesting. Last week I had some feedback that my hands are very distracting, but you know what? I can't help that. I can't help that my hands. I think they said I should sit on my hands, and I think if I sit on my hands, I'll be like, oh, go on. That's it. I can't speak now. That's it. End of podcast. So, without further ado, let me introduce you to Gaelle Deschamps. She is not, and I tested and I asked off camera if she's related to Didier Deschamps, the French football manager, and she's not, but she did confess to using it to get better tables at restaurants. I like your style. Maybe I shouldn't have told everyone about that. But
I thought it was a little secret.
that's true. That's it. You're exposed to the world. And I met you a long time ago. You're in a very different setting. You came spoke for us. I mean, you've had a very successful corporate career, but now you've transitioned. So, Gail, first of all, welcome to the Public Speaking Expert podcast.
Thank you
What
very much, Elliot.
I want to know and what people want to know, let's start at the beginning. Let's have a little bit about you, and then we'll build from there because you've been on a fascinating journey. So, tell us a little bit about yourself when you're not trying to get good tables at restaurants.
Which right now on Monday, 1 o'clock, I am not. I'm all yours. First of all, wonderful to be here today and to talk about one of my favorite topics is how to help women step up and shine bright and dare to speak and the power of speaking up. Because not only we speak on our behalf and our own message, but we can speak on the behalf of other women and inspire other women as we do so. But before going into the topic, let me just tell you a bit about myself. So obviously I'm French with that name. And I have spent about 23 years in the corporate world, which basically was my dream. So I have actually lived my dream of traveling, working for big corporation, FMCG, and managing people and teams and reversing negative trends on brands, on companies. And it was all really fascinating and I really loved it. I've worked for companies like L'Oreal, SC Johnson, Coca-Cola. So I really had an amazing corporate career. But when I reached 40, I had this primary question haunting me of why am I here? What is really my purpose?
Deep. That's a deep question.
So it took me a while to really sort of see the wood for the tree and get an answer to that question. But it sort of came to me as I was traveling in sort of a desertic Namibia. And I find that I was all about fueling positive transformation. Every single thing I had done in my life, whether I was working with business and I was transforming brands, transforming companies, I also was an executive coach to high potential women. So I was helping them transform. In my own private life, I love renovating dilapidated properties and turning them around. So there was that common thread in everything. And I was like, okay, so that's what I'm about. And 2 years ago, so I'm not going to say how, the age, but a fair amount after my 40s, I thought I need to take a leap and leave the corporate world to really fulfill my why, to really fulfill my purpose and fueling positive transformation. So I set up my business, which is called G-Force, and it's all about empowering people to reconnect with their life force and be and do what they were meant to do on this planet, to help them have these questions of who am I? What's my positive impact? How can I use my strength and have more energy, more happiness on a daily basis?
I love that. So let's dial back a little bit from someone had a very powerful and successful corporate career. What are some of the challenges, let's focus on women, that women face when they want to make this leap, right? Because you had a calling, I mean, you said when you're 40, so clearly it's only a couple of years ago, that happened. And you had this calling. Now, from desire and thought to execution is a long road, right? Because all roads are flat on maps. It's very easy to write it down and everything's very flat. The practicality of going, I'm handing in my notice to fulfilling what you're talking about, positive change, becoming an influencer in an industry or a space. What are some of the biggest obstacles? I mean, what were some of your obstacles? Or were you just like, no obstacles, I'm
Hmm.
out, c'est la vie, au revoir, goodbye? What were they?
I think my case is pretty typical of all women because I have been a coach to very successful women and they have shared similar insights. So it'll be interesting to see whether the ladies listening to this podcast, do they identify, and if they have ideas and want to share what's stopping them from writing the next chapter, whatever the next chapter is. But for me, it really was about building that confidence, building that muscle, because I was very confident in the corporate world because it was something that I was doing day in, day out. I had experience, I had connection, I had wisdom, I had fallen and came back up. I knew the stuff. So therefore I was confident. To go somewhere where I had never been, where no one in my family had never been, I didn't have someone who could just hand me on a platter all the kind of do's and don'ts, was a bit more scary. So I would say I probably was my own barrier, my own worst obstacle, because the inner critic in my head would be like, well, you've never done that. Why would you be successful? Or, well, no one in your family has done it. Why would you start? Why should you start? Why aren't you happy where you are? Why do you want more? Should you not be satisfied with less? Your life is pretty good. Why are you going to rock everything? All these little voices in your head are like preventing you from taking that leap of faith. And so really what helped me was to make a parallel plan, not to jump one day to the next, because that would be like really unprepared. And I'm not that kind of person. I need to have a plan. I need to know, to build the steps that get me there. So I certified as a coach. So first of all, I got qualification. And then I practiced in the corporate world. On the side of my day-to-day job, I volunteered. I raised my hand. I said, please. So it was a bit tense because it meant having almost 2 lives for a while of doing my normal job and studying and volunteering. And I also was the head of leadership for the Coca-Cola University, which is the internal program that train 86,000 employees around the world. And I said, no, I want to do that. And I certified for that. And I learned about leadership even more. And then I took 5 days at a time and was training people as an immersive program. So it was time consuming, but it meant that I built these essential skills and I had data points of feedback, people telling me, oh my God, Gaelle, you were amazing. You were in your powers. I was like, oh, okay, that's good. That means I'm doing something right. And what else can I do better? So I built the confidence muscle. I built the experience. And then when I felt I had enough, I was like, okay, now I feel ready. But for me, it's like, in order for women and for us to feel confidence, we need 5 things. There's like 5 ingredients. And I studied math.
Let's hear these 5 things. Go on. I'm going to make notes of them because I want to refer to them.
So the first thing I think we need to feel confident is competence. You have to know your craft. You can't just start doing something. You can't win an Olympic medal without being competent in a sport, right? So you need to have an area of expertise. What are you competent at? Number 2, you need self-esteem. And that's about tuning off your inner critic. This is about not letting these dark thoughts control your mind, to really have techniques about how to shut that voice down and how to boost your self-esteem. And I will happily share today a free guide on 30 confidence booster to all your audience. So number 1, competence. Number 2, self-esteem. Number 3, optimism. I think optimism is an underrated quality. And in the corporate world, I was often told, well, Gaelle, you're too optimistic. You're obviously not thinking about the big important stuff, but I do think it is an absolute necessity today in the world that we live in. There is so much negativity. And if you get trapped into that negativity bias, if you watch the news 24/7, you're going to like sap all your energy. You're going to sap your vitality. You're going to sap your positivity. And you're going to be left with very little to do the things that you love the most. So I do think it's very important for people to consciously, strategically refuel their positivity buckets and make sure that they believe and trust that whatever they're doing, there's going to be a positive outcome. Maybe not the first time, maybe not the second time, maybe not the 10th time. You know, Walt Disney famously had 300 no's from banks to start his business. You know, it's the game of one more time. Let's try one more time. So I think optimism is really important. The fourth ingredient to confidence is courage. Nothing great happens, nothing without you taking that leap of faith, that first step of going in the unknown. The best thing you can do is just try. You know, if it doesn't work, you've learned loads. So you've got the courage to start, to just do one, but not the big thing. You know, often we shoot ourselves in the foot because we want to deliver the fully fledged thing. But today is all about agility, and it's about, you know, your first prototype. Just test that. Don't finish until you've got the fully fledged version of it. Just test the first, whatever it is in your area, whether it's a product, whether it's an idea or concept. Just go with the first draft. And then the last thing is vulnerability. The fifth ingredient is vulnerability. I think it's, you feel a lot better if you know that it's okay to fail, that you're not perfect. It takes off the edge of, ooh, I will only start when I'm ready. I will only start when I'm perfect. I will only start when I've got it all figured out. No. We all have, we will all fail. Actually, why not expect failure? And that it's part of the learning process. If we don't fail, we don't learn. So stay vulnerable and stay open to failure, because actually there's a lot of juicy stuff in it. And if you know that, then you can be more confident.
So competence, self-esteem, optimism, courage. And I think also what you've got there, if I'm to kind of go with the theme, is you've also got the 5 ingredients for influence when you speak as well, and why more women should step up and speak out and use speaking to influence, which will. But what I do want to ask you is, how does someone go from, because competent people who stay in that world, or right, you pitches in the UK and can see some football players, but they're not in the Premier League, right? You can come across very competent business owners, but they're not to the level of success they could be. And in the space we're going to deep dive, you can see a lot of competent speakers, but they don't have the influence that they want. The bridge from competence to it's world-class genius. What's the bridge there for you? I'm interested in what you would say.
So if I give you the recipe, if I give you the key, how much do I get?
Well, I don't know. We can talk offline about that.
It is such a good question. Such a good question. It is $1 million question, to be honest. And I can offer my humble opinion on this. But I do believe I think it's about showing up as your authentic self. So, and this is kind of a self-reflection, maybe lifetime work, right? It's not something that you wake up one day and you know who you are. It's something that you need to chip at every day. But I think it's once you own your story, what made you, who are you? Why are you different? What's your stars? You know, like a star shines bright. What are your pointy stars that makes you shine? What makes you unique? What's your fingerprint? What is so special about you? What's your DNA? What are you made of? Once you can really put that in a sentence, a word, write it down, say it out, nothing can stop you. So I think, how do you decode that? How do you find that? You know, it's what gives you energy. What are you passionate about? What makes you cry? what broke you in your life? When did you feel that you had nothing left to give? Like these moments in life, they're life-defining moments. And often we choose to put a story of disempowerment around these moments in life. But actually, there's an opportunity to put a story of empowerment, of what if you've been able to go through these things and extract the learning, extract the wisdom, extract this, the life lesson, that makes you stronger, tougher. And you know that unique set of experience that you've gone through makes you who you are today, and should be the fire in the belly that keeps you going longer than the person next door in that particular field, because of what you've experienced. So I think it's a mix of reflection, self-awareness, and really being able to decode your story. What's so special about your story? So for example, to give you an example, because I know sometimes these concepts are just words and it's hard to say, what does she mean exactly? Yeah. So for a long time, I was ashamed of part of my story. I kept it quiet. I never told it. I even tried to forget it, right? And I just replicated what other part of my family had done, because I wasn't shown how to own up to our family story. My grandmother committed suicide, and my mother woke up when she was 5, finding the dead body of her mother on the street. She jumped from the window. So not the ideal childhood start that anyone would want. For yourself, for your parents, for your children. But that was the start of my mom's life. And that has shaped her, right? So you can't say, I'm going to forget about that chapter. You know, she tried to forget about chapter. She never told me about that chapter. I only found out as an adult. And I think, I thought long and hard about it. And I thought, actually, I need to own this part of my family's chapter. And it is no surprise that today I want to dedicate my life to women. It actually makes sense. I've had a woman who's been silenced. She had no tool to face whatever mental illness at the time. We weren't sort of focused on mental well-being. And so maybe perhaps she was alone and didn't find a supporting group of friends or professional that could help her go through that dark time of her life. And she felt that was the only option for her. Now, as a result, my mom has been such a strong, resilient woman, full of love. She has supported me. She has dedicated her life to raising me in the way that she wished she was raised, right? So she is totally made up of that incident. That incident shaped her in of course, it was painful, but it also gave her amazing, unconditional love that she probably would have never given me if she had her mother every day next to her. And so part of, I guess, my point is me owning up to that story. It gives me goosebumps. It gives me power. There is not one day I do not want to get up and do my job, because it is fueled by that potentially hurtful and disempowering story, but I've chosen to give it meaning and to be my fuel. And so I think I'd like to help women and men turn pain into power. Whatever you have had in your life that has caused you great pain, this has potential to be your power, like no one else. And when you speak from that moment, from that place of truth, then you're speaking up, right? Then you have influence, because it's personal, it's authentic, and hopefully it's inspiring, because if someone has been able to turn pain into power, then whoever's listening to you think, oh my God, I can do that too. I want to do that too. And then you have influence. Yeah. Then someone else wants to do what you've just shared.
So it's quite an interesting concept. I mean, it's world class. They've got there through themselves, right? I mean, if we look at certain people, whatever space you're in, because we have a variety of listeners. Gary Vaynerchuk or Gary V, he's 100% himself, and right, the Tony Robbins, the Oprahs, the Amy Cuddys of the world. It's like they are the unapologetic. Again, Ronaldo, right? Football. He's unapologetically himself. Love it or hate me, I'm me, right? And it's interesting because I think then be authentically you is develop this to then be the whole package. And I think people that struggle to don't invest and become the full package. They might just take a little bit of something, completely, focus on that, but then 25% of everything else. When I went and trained in Shaolin with a monk, that's one of the things I learned is everything connected, right? So I was doing Kung Fu for a week. So much more than just a physical challenge of doing Kung Fu. It was a nutritional challenge. It was the mental challenge. It was and it stopping and balancing and pausing. Years ago, it's that real push pull, stand still in movement, and you're just like, you've got to understand everything must come to become world class. So you very much, I know you wholeheartedly, I could see the passion there focused on women. I know you will work and you do work with men as well, but really
Yep.
the target is women. So what do you feel? What are the obstacles women are facing to become influential, to speak up, and have that influence?
And I think that what I'm about to say really also linked to what you just said about, okay, it's competence, and it's competence taken to the extreme, right? So I think what has been underestimated is, who do we surround ourselves with? So if you want to become an A game player, like I don't know, an entrepreneur, a singer, a dancer, whatever, are you surrounding yourself with people who have excelled and achieved and accomplished in the area that you want to be good at? Are you drinking, reading, listening to the best of the best? And we become like the 5 people we spend the most time with. So are you surrounding yourself with people who are encouraging you in your journey to transform, to start this new chapter, to end this relationship, to start this new business, whatever is your next chapter? Or are you staying with people that play small and that are going to keep you playing small? So I think there's something about, you talk about investment, but I think there is about, who are we listening to? What podcasts? What TV series? Are we just, eating and drinking Netflix series that has nothing to do with what we want to do? Are we kind of killing time? Or are we being strategic about learning from the best who have written a book, who have made a program, a documentary? In our real life, are our friends, are our colleagues the kind of leaders we want to become, or not? And so I think I have a whole chapter on this in my coaching program, in my training, which is about curating a tribe that helps you be who you want to be. And I think it's really often underestimated, but there's definitely a lot of value in re-looking at your current network, and are they the right type of people who can help you get there?
Yeah. And the question I'll ask you is, again, the theory of that is easy enough. Toxicity, get rid of disempowerment, get around the people that are holding you practice, right? It's not right, because it could be your family just as much as it could be your friends with and you've known for years. And I remember, when I found this and we talk about, very similar concepts, it's about sending them love but paving your own way.
Mm-hmm.
Would you say? Or is
I would say that.
Walk away. What would you say?
I think, I'm a mom of 3, so I'm also very interested in parenting. And I think there's a lot of similarities about leadership and parenting, because when you become a parent, you have to lead your family, right?
Yeah.
And I think there's a concept which I love, and I will borrow from parenting to sort of leadership, which is love and kindness on one side, but boundaries on the other side. To your child, you want to love them and shower them with love, but you also want them to have boundaries, because that's necessary to, like a plant. If there's no boundaries and the plant grows like this, it's not great. There's a tutor, there's like a little stick that sort of shows the direction for growth. I think we need to provide that to our children, and we need to provide that to our network. So it's not disowning part of our past, but it's to know your boundaries. So, I can only meet that person X amount of time per year. Otherwise, I feel deflated or I feel depressed, or, so what you have to be really rigorous about each of the person that are in your life, and make a list of, what have they brought to their life? What is the good that we want to honor and thank? And what is the stuff that's not good and that we want to let go and not have to face again? And then we have to engineer. We have to be engineers, engineering our lives. You have to be the creator of your life. If you don't do it, no one else is going to do it. And be ruthless in a way, but as you said, with kindness, because these people have been, either they're must part of your fabric, or they have been part of the fabric. And that might be, if you change gear, that might not be, well received on the other side. So you've got to find a way that's both strong and kind. But ultimately, it's about creating healthy boundary for yourself. And that alone is going to unleash new level of energy. And it could be people, but it could also be tasks, or it could be thoughts or topics or places. Like you will know, like, we talk about intuition and gut. You will know when you are in a place, or listen, or converse a specific conversation topic. Is it giving you energy, or is it not giving you energy? And honoring that, every time that happens, clock it down. Well, I don't like this kind of stuff. I like these kind of conversation. I like that. Or tasks. If you end up doing admin, or you're like, because you're disorganized, but you hate admin and this is eating all your time and you don't have time to be creative. How can you delegate? How can you pay how can you have a personal VA at, like, $10 an hour in somewhere else in the world? So there's loads of techniques on all the different levels of toxicity or energy sapping that one can look at, and must look at, if you want to have the energy to do the big things, the important things, the things which will, it's like a momentum, right? If you do what you love, you get energy. People tell me, oh my God, Gaelle, you do so much. You created your company, G-Force. You created your Art of Confidence for Women program. You renovated a castle in France. You have 3 kids. You la la la. How do you do it all? The secret is everything that I do, I love, and it gives me energy when I do it. So then I have more energy for the next thing I want to do. So whereas people stuck in things that are sapping their energy, so they just do one thing and they have no more energy at the end of that one thing.
Yeah, very. So why can female leaders be more climate, right? Because wouldn't it, where things are economy in the UK anyway, depends where you're listening, but I think there's a global economy challenge. I think that we're all affected by devil advocates right now more than anything. The question is more of a devil advocate. I can't say the word. Advocacy. There we go. Playing around here. Is this the time for people and leaders and speak up and speak out for influence, or should we wait?
You know what? In times of darkness, the ones who are able to see the light are the leaders that change the world, that they are the game changers. So if you are able to see the light, you have a duty to the society to help people see the light. In every single crisis in the world, in any time, whether it's today or First World War or anything, we've had crisis all along. It's up and down always. In times of crisis, there are millions to be made, if that's what drives you. There are society to reawaken, if that's what's your bucket. There are, it is not the end of the world. It's not Armageddon. It is just a phase, and we need to, the only way is through it. And as long as we can have that candle, that light to show the way, I think that's when we need voices to speak up, because otherwise everyone stays in darkness. And the other thing I want to say about that is, if you think, I think one of the prevalent disempowering thoughts that women can have, and men, is, well, what do I have to say? I'm just a normal Joe Block. It's like girl next door type thing. What's so special about me? And I can guarantee you that everybody feels that, and everybody was that at one point. even the president of America at one point thought they were the guy next door. Nobody was born with, I'm going to be an American president. It's a given. You don't have to worry, buddy. So I think just choose not to listen to that little voice of, I'm only a girl next door. And if you know your why, if you know why do you want to speak up? What's your message? So why do you want to speak up? What's your message? What's your message of hope? Maybe sometimes, maybe it's just about dancing. I have a friend and she has a TV channel and it's all about positivity and dancing. Sometimes it does. You don't have to be a rocket science. You don't have to invent the next medicine. You don't have to, vacuum CO2 out of the world. I mean, it'd be great if you do. But what I mean is that you can make a difference from a very simple, if you put one smile to one person per day, already you're making a difference. So there's a million ways that you can make a difference, that by speaking up, you can have a positive impact. And I would say, make sure that you understand your why. So why do you want to speak up and about what? And try to visualize your desired outcome. So how do you want the world to feel once you've spoken? Is it inspired? Is it happy? Is it better health? What is it? So try to visualize and put it in words. What's it? And it could be very simple. It could be just, as I said, one smile. Make people smile. And then just keep that. It's like, it's one of the kind of techniques that, even Olympians use, is that visualization is so powerful. Your brain does not know the difference between reality and made up reality. So visualize yourself spreading that message, visualize your audience transforming. And before you know it, you'll be like, oh, that's not so bad.
Yeah, absolutely.
So there's yeah, sorry, I was going to say just one more thing on that topic. There's 5 things I want to share maybe with you now, which would help you straight away. Like you can implement, as soon as you finish watching, you can start implementing that. The first one is visualization. So it's so powerful. It's almost, you have to be able to run a mini movie in your head with as many detail, with using the 5 senses of you achieving your goal, you having delivered that speech, or you having spoken up, or you having raised a hand in a difficult meeting, or you having had that difficult conversation. Whatever it is that you're afraid of doing, you have to visualize yourself doing it. And as many times as possible. You can have a routine. You can say, I'm going to do that every time I wake up, every time I go to bed. Then for women in particular, like, what's your power outfits? What are the dress codes and clothes that are going to make you feel powerful? And just make sure that you dress up. There's a risk during lockdown. We've all gone really pajama and slippers, but it's not doing anything for our confidence. It's not doing anything for our confidence. So make sure that you dress up every day in your power outfit. And especially when you have the D-Day of when you're speaking up on that day. The third thing is, what are you doing to prime yourself? Are you just showing up hands in the pockets just after having had a tube station where you were frustrated because the tube didn't show up? Or it's very important to dedicate time before the moment, the conversation or the meeting or the opportunity to speak. How are you priming yourself? What is the 15, 30 minutes, 1 hour routine that you will do again and again before you do that will put you in your peak state, that will prepare you and wire you up for energy and passion and vitality? Because, you can't just go from one thing to the next. You can't just, be in a sweaty in the tube and then be ready to deliver your amazing speech. So just make sure that you save the hour or the half hour before the event, and you work on a priming routine that's empowering you. And that's linked to peak state. So do you know what makes you in peak state? Do you know the magic formula for you? You can Google peak state. There's a million things you can do. Breath work. You can do exercises. You can say your mantras. There's a whole bunch of stuff that you can do. Drinking water, But make sure that you are in peak state. You cannot deliver anything in a low state, in a disempowered state. So, also be very strategic about what you do that day before. So if you're going to have difficult conversation, then leave some space for you to re-energize yourself, that you're going to be your best self at the moment of speaking up. And then the last thing is power poses. It's so easy. There's Amy McGrady. She did a TED talk on this, and she's done studies. She's a scientist, and basically, the power poses are poses that take more, where you take more space. Whether it's kind of the victory. You can't really see me on the full screen, the victory sign, but you have to sort of stand up and take that pose. And just doing that pose for 2 minutes reduce your stress hormone, the cortisol hormone, by 25% and increase your testosterone by 20%. So that's so simple. If you just took that one advice away and did that one thing, you would rewire yourself for confidence. So, and as I said, I've got a list of 30 and I will happily send it to you, Elliot, for you to share to your audience. But yeah, be strategically vested in how you manage your time in the run up to that event, to that speaking up, and then you'll feel more empowered.
I love that. You can tell people where to find it directly, by the way, Gaelle. By the way, we lost you off camera, just so you know.
Oh.
I don't know where you went. You did your power pose and you blew the camera,
I
think. So,
sorry.
That's okay. Don't you worry about that, because people are going to listen to this on podcast as well. But it'd be nice to see your face.
Yes.
I can carry on.
Okay. All right. I see myself, so I'm not sure what's gone wrong.
Oh. Don't worry about it. Don't worry about it. It's all good. There you are. I love outfits, prime yourself, peak state, and power poses, which was made famous by Amy Cuddy. There's a TED talk all about that, isn't there? You can share. So in a minute, you can tell them how they can get them directly from you. You don't need me; they can come to you. It's interesting. You talked about lockdown. How it's funny during lockdown, I still put on aftershave. For me, it's smelling good, right? So even though there was no one around me except my wife, she's used to my smell. I still put on aftershave, and I would feel good. So my nostrils would be open, and I felt that I was ready for business. So I think that's absolutely true.
You're gonna laugh. You're gonna laugh, but you put your aftershave. I still put my high heels, and I was walking in the house where and I said, Mark, I was telling my husband, I need to continue wearing this. Otherwise, I'm not going to even remember how to walk in heels. And also, I love the effect I feel when I walk in heels. So I used to just wear my heels for just walking around the house.
There you go. See, it's the things that matter, that trigger and spark things up. So good. And a lot of people, and I'd still things like that. So I think that's absolutely. We talked about confidence, self-esteem, optimism, courage, vulnerability. We talked about taking energizes you, what the passion for, and of course what broke you. And you very kindly spoke about your mother, your grandmother as well. More and all these are points towards how these are all ingredients for influence, right? There's no one size to fit all. And when you talked about why speak out, visualization, find yourself, being in peak state, and of course power poses to help. Incredible value you've added here and insights. So first things first, how do people get in touch with you? Book a reservation at a restaurant they can't get into? No, how do they reach out to you? What do they?
So they can find me on my website, so gforceco.co.uk. They can find me on Instagram. They can find me where else?
Is it all
Facebook,
under GeForce?
GeForce, yes, all under GeForce or Gaelle Deschamps. So I've got a GeForce on Instagram. I've got a Gaelle Deschamps on Instagram. But I think probably the websites will be easier because they can DM me and I will send them the free 30 confidence boosters. And I do one-to-one coaching, I do training, I do retreats. So it's all hosted on my website. So they'll have all the information. I have this Art of Confidence 10-step process, which takes 15 hours to do. You've got homework. It's a mix of a TED talk and coaching. So it's very personalized. And they can have a look at that. There's loads of free content and videos they can listen to and get more value when they go on their website.
Amazing. So much. And there's actually a question I want to ask you, as you talked about parenting and leadership. before we wrap up. So there's a famous book called French Food. So do your children throw?
Of course they do. So French women don't get fat. Well, I got fat, and I got slim. No, I think, what I'm going to say to that is, which is how I was raised. My mother encouraged me to eat my food with my fingers, because we come, societies and tribes in the past where we're eating with our fingers. There is something very tactile and sensorial and even sensual about eating with your fingers. I think we tend to become too aseptic as a society, where we want to always clinical everything, and everything's got to be, and we put gloves and we don't want to touch anything. But there's a really a greater relationship and symbiosis when you touch the food, when you're not just with a metallic bit. So I was always encouraged to eat with my fingers as a child. And throwing food is the next level, right? So you don't want to always throw food, but my child and I, we have loads of fun times throwing blueberries and trying to grab them in the mouth. I am terrible. He's really good. And I can provide entertainment without being disrespectful to the food. So, I think there's always a happy in between that we can find. So yeah, I'm not for throwing up spaghettis, but, blueberries, and why not?
Brilliant. Well, thank you for the podcast and sharing your tips, your strategies, and your steps. So it's been fun. Chat to Gaelle on her or via Instagram, however you choose to reach out to this incredible force, leader and woman. And in the meantime, I'd like to thank you again for tuning in for the podcast. I'll be back next Monday with what you'll find out. You're heard, and you're always using your voice for good. Thank you, Gaelle, for being with us.
Thank you, Elliot. Thank you, everyone.
Next episode. Au revoir.
Bye. Bye. Au revoir.